Welcome to the Kate Hill Show on Radio Arder. And yes, again, this week it's real life, it's real people. And I have a wonderful guest here with me today, the lovely Sue Roberts. So, Sue.
Hello, Kate.
Nice to see you. I thought, because my show is all about talking about real things, real life experiences that people have been through. So you came to mind as the perfect guest.
Oh, brilliant. Well, I'm glad to be here to share my story.
Well, I would like you to explain in your own words how it happened that you were told that you would be in a wheelchair for the rest of your life.
Yeah, that was a difficult one. I was in a road traffic accident at the age of 32, which was, you know, it happens in a split moment. I'd been to a party, so you get a cab home because you've been drinking, and the cab was involved in the road traffic accident. So it was hit from behind.
Okay.
I fell off the back seat of the taxi and I hit my head on the glass partition of the cab and fell to the floor. And the normal things happen, like you get taken to hospital, you get treated, and you get told you've got a whiplash injury, wear a soft collar. But it wasn't till the next day when I woke up and I really couldn't move my head. You know, to get out of bed, I couldn't just do that normal movement where you lift your body weight and get out.
What was that like for you at the time? Because, you know, you did the right thing, you got the taxi home, and yet you're involved in an accident. Obviously, you think, yeah, you expect a bit of whiplash, but to not be able to move the next day, what sort of thing was going through your head at the time?
Oh my God, it's real. You know, this is real. I've really had an accident. And you just think, well, whiplash is sore. I'm not going to be able to move my neck. Give it a few days, I'll feel better. And by Monday morning, I was in complete agony and the bruising had started to come out. And I had some very strange bruising. It was all down the front of my chest.
Wow.
Well, considering I'd hit my head, to have bruising on your chest. So I went to work as normal, and then I left early and went to the hospital, to A&E, and said, I've just come to check myself out because I'm in real pain. I've got this bruising. And they said, oh, that's where the seatbelt would have held you back. I said, I wasn't wearing a seatbelt. So this bruising that came out all on the front of my chest was from my spinal injury, and it was protruding out. And it wasn't even then that I realised I had a massive problem. It's as I continued with life. So I used to work full time. I ran a restaurant. I'd go swimming. I had a young daughter to look after. And things kept happening that were not normal. I'd lose the feeling in my right hand and I'd drop things. And then I'd burn myself because I wasn't feeling the heat. I wasn't getting a warning as you go to a closed pan, so you didn't stop because I'd lost the feeling in my hands, and then I lost the feeling in my feet from time to time, so I'd fall a lot and trip and just be very unsteady, and then my coordination got bad. Apparently the reactions in my eyes were slow, but I never noticed that until it was checked out. So eventually I went to a physio. The physio would do all the normal stuff when you've got a whiplash injury. And she kept saying something isn't right here because you keep losing the feeling. I'd get a lot of pins and needles. I'd been swimming and I couldn't get the feeling back in my arm.
So what, you know, mentally, what was I mean, you've got all these physical symptoms, but mentally, what was going on for you at the time?
Well, I just thought something's wrong. I didn't know what it was. I went to see the physio. The physio referred me to a specialist. The specialist sent me for various tests. I was really lucky that I had private health insurance. So I spent altogether £40,000 on investigation stuff. And I went for nerve conduction tests. Then I went for some other scans at the hospital, and eventually an MRI scan, which revealed everything. And I was under a specialist for a neurosurgeon. And when I went to get the results of the MRI scan, that was the shocker. It was an evening. They told me don't come alone, so I took my brother with me. And the guy put the MRI scan against a light and said, "This is a scan of a paraplegic. How are you walking?"
Oh, wow.
And that was the reality of how poorly I was. I know I felt terrible, and I know I had lots of symptoms, but that was the reality check.
So was that then when you were told, well, actually, you're going to end up in a wheelchair?
Well, I think I just had a breakdown. I cried and I cried all weekend. You know, as you tell people, I've just had the results of my scan. It was pretty awful. And still, there's, like every bereavement, there's shock, there's numbing, there's disbelief. It was like my bereavement was for my health. So you still go through all those stages of bereavement. So it's like, no, this can't be really happening. But it was, and it was happening to me.
And physically, could you feel yourself, the changes going on in your body? Was your movements becoming, were you able to move less? What was happening?
Because it was slow.
Okay.
And it was gradual. But also, it was very debilitating because you lose the use of your arm for a day. You suddenly realise you can't do up a button, you can't tie a shoelace, you can't, and you learn through what you can't do. You don't appreciate how lucky we are when we've got good health until you lose part of that. So I used to have to wear stretchy clothes and Velcros because it's hard to do zippers and buttons and all of that. And it was just, and not wearing high shoes because you'd lose your balance.
Yeah.
You know, when you're wearing high shoes, you have to really think about how you walk. So he referred me to a specialist. There was only one specialist in the country. He was a professor of in the university, and he was a syringomyelia specialist. He'd written a paper, and he lived in Newcastle, but he was near retirement age, a surgeon. So he said, "I'm going to refer you to him for some help." So he came from Newcastle to see me, and that was the big reality check, really. He said, your long-term prognosis is not good. You're going to end up in a wheelchair. And I'm like, when? And he said, well, I'm also visiting a lady in Banbury who had an accident 11 weeks ago, and she's already in her wheelchair. I was like, this is horrendous. I'd had my accident probably 18 weeks before, and I was like, I don't really want to end up in a wheelchair. And he was saying, well, I think part of your well-being is your positive attitude, that you've almost disbelieved it. He said, one, you have to get your head round that you have got this injury and accept it, but you could make it your friend and work with it and work against it, because it's easy to get a diagnosis and quit. Just accept it, and you told, this is a life.
So for you then,
long illness.
Was there kind of a sense of disbelief at first? That whole thing of, well, actually, I don't want to believe this. This isn't what's going to happen to me, because, there's going to be people that are listening to this and thinking, how do you cope with something like that? Because mentally, you must have so many things going round in your mind. It
was pretty, I spent hours in tears and hours in pain and feeling hopeless. I went and got some counselling, and actually it was the counsellor that said to me, what are you going to do when you're in a wheelchair? Well, I couldn't even answer that question. That was just too unreal. I wasn't prepared to accept that. So he said, you've got a really empathic stance about you and you're quite compassionate. Why don't you train to be a counsellor and psychologist? Because then you could do a job in a wheelchair. That would work really well. My company had medical reports and pensioned me off it, and I was disabled. I was getting disability benefit. That's the most awful thing from having a really successful job with lots of responsibility to being labelled and given a disability. That really changes your life.
Did you go through depression at that time? How did you keep your mood, I suppose, uplifted? How did you keep yourself
It's really hard when you've got a child to look after. You're a single mom. Your motivation is to do what you need every day to look after your child. Although my daughter used to help me get dressed and do all my shoelaces, that was like awful to have to get a 6-7-year-old to help you. But it is about having a positive mental attitude, working with the information you've got. Not knowing when you've got a diagnosis is horrible. If you ask the right questions and you work with the team and they're good at communicating, they'll share their information. So the doctor that I saw from Newcastle, he wrote a paper and presented it at university on me. And he talked about not every person is the same. This is a typical syringomyelia. She's got a spinal cyst at C5, but she's not in a wheelchair. And then he talked about other people in comparison. And it is about having the drive and the will to stay well. Over time, I did deteriorate quite a lot. And I had a very loyal friend from Minneapolis. And she said to me, Sue, you need to do something about this now. As the 10 years is going to be up, you'll be in a wheelchair and you're going to be in real trouble. And it was like this denial. And she helped me, actually. She saw me when I wasn't well. And she said, if I do the research to find something to help you, would you listen to me? I was like, absolutely, I would, yeah. So she was networking in Minneapolis and she was looking for 10 clinicians to work in her new therapy rooms because we met through psychology and counselling. And she came across a man who was networking and he had some medical equipment. And his opening selling line was, who's the worst person you know? And she said, well, my friend Sue Roberts, she's the worst person I know. Not because I'm not a nice person, because I had a disability and my health was suffering. And he said, no, send her over, we'll fix her. So she did.
So when you had that call from her then, and she's like, I've actually done this research and I think that there is somebody here that can help you. How was that? Was it like, oh my God, this is amazing, you know, I can be fixed? What was your first thoughts?
I've just done a 14-hour flight and I could hardly walk when I got off the plane. There's no way I'm doing that again. She said, no, you really need to come. So it took a long time. I had to save the money because the treatment was, I think it was $150 an hour. And they said I'd need 30 treatments.
Right.
So you have to find the money to have the treatment, the money to leave your home for a month, and the money to live in America for a month. So I got my act together, went over for, I think I did it in the month of August. I can't really remember. I flew to the States. And in fact, I had 21 treatments in 30 days, not 30. And I did, at the end of it, feel amazing, could feel my feet, came home and thought, you know what, I'm going to dance to celebrate this. So I learned to ballroom dance because I could feel my feet and I had some good coordination back. The journey of having 21 treatments wasn't great. The first 5, I was in massive pain and I really thought I'd quit. By that 6th treatment, I said, I can't do this, I'm in too much pain. Well, why didn't you say we can do ear reflex points? We've got some things that can help you. I was thinking, why didn't you tell me this at the beginning? So, I did do all of the treatments and was very grateful. And then came home and my daughter said, you're my new mummy. Oh. So that was lovely.
So all these years forward, you do ballroom dancing.
I do.
You run a class on a Thursday.
I do, in Binley Woods Village Hall.
And also, I think the wonderful thing about this story is that you actually bought the machine that you were treated with.
I did.
And brought it over here.
Yeah, I did do a deal with God when I wasn't in a good place in America. And I thought, if you fix me, I promise to help other people. I promise. So, of course, when I got fixed, the answer was really to bring the same treatment that's available in America to the UK. So I had to train. I went back to college for another year. I studied anatomy and physiology. I went to America and trained for a winter season on how to use all the protocols. Then I bought the equipment, imported it into the UK. So we opened a clinic in Binley Woods in Coventry, and we've been trading now for 10 years.
Wow.
And making a difference to a lot of people's lives.
That's just an amazing story. It is an amazing story. You know, and this is what I like to do, talk to people about real things, you know, things that people have experienced in life and come out the other side. So I'm really grateful that you've shared your story and your experience with us. The machine is amazing, I know, because you've treated me a few times. So yeah, thank you so much. Well, there you have it. You know, like I said, I do like to get deep down and dirty with my guests, like to find out what makes them tick. So